It is October of 2024, Brian Wang,
Hmm.
and the rare person out there in the Tesla community. I mean, I hardly hear anybody talking about 2025. I
Hmm.
know that I've tried to brand myself as the guy that's all about 2026, but there's a whole year in between.
Right.
And
There
it's
is.
kind of developing as a pretty substantially important year.
Mm-hmm.
So, with your permission, I'd like to go through um, kind of the main categories,
Hmm.
and not even with robotaxi as part of it,
Right.
just the hardware FSD. But anyway,
Hmm.
does that sound like fun?
No, sounds great. A lot of fun.
All right, okay. For those of you who don't know Brian, Brian is a noted futurist. I can never remember the website, Brian, where you play. It's not really
No,
play.
don't worry about the prediction site. Like that
No,
on the prediction site, Metaculous, like I'm top 1%. But um main thing is my own website, Next Big Future.
that's
Yeah.
right.
That.
That's
Yeah.
right. People should
No.
always visit Next Big Future if they really want to know what's going on in the world
Mhm.
of science, pretty much across a wide swath of scientific discovery and intrigue and things that are
Yeah.
happening out there. All right. Well, Brian, let's start with, of course, cars.
Hmm.
We've heard a couple of different things. One from Elon, who says that we will have a 50% increase next year
Hmm.
over 2023 numbers, which are
Hmm.
probably going to be pretty dang close to 2024 numbers. So that
Hmm.
would be 2.7 million.
Hmm.
We've also heard from another one of the Tesla execs the other day that they have a 3 million capacity between
Hmm.
the four factories without adding any more production capacity.
Hmm.
So I took that to mean, and I've talked about it a couple of times on the show already, that this means without adding any lines, without adding tooling, et cetera, they can get to
Hmm.
3 million. And that's probably a low estimate. And then actually with Jeff Lutz, and then last night with Bradford Ferguson, I think there's general agreement that the buildings that we already own, Tesla already owns, already has built up, there's already walls and a roof, plus the Berlin extension, which is now kind of underway. We would
Hmm.
probably have a capacity in the buildings of about 4.5 million.
Hmm.
So it's about 2 million in Texas, a
Hmm.
million each in million, more than a million in Shanghai, a million in Berlin, and 700,000 in Fremont.
Yeah.
So this seems to be about where we are with regard to capacity right now, somewhere in the 4.5 million, if all factories were running it at full capacity.
Yep.
All right, but there's a difference between having capacity and actually getting the sales.
Yes. Right.
So thought I'd go. I don't know if this is a smart way to think about it, but here's how I'm thinking about it. Shanghai, we can probably get a couple of 100,000 extra sales next year. That would be because we would be increasing capacity. We know we've increased the throughput. So
Hmm.
we do have extra capacity to get a couple of 100,000 extra cars next year. And then basically the sales of those extra cars in China and the export markets that it served, that extra 20% roughly would come from FSD being better, FSD being offered, actually being offered in China uh,
Hmm.
as something that people can turn on, not just buy,
Yep.
but they can turn it on.
Yep.
Also from the Juniper improvement, continued improvement maybe in the economy in China as China's stimulating. All of those reasons, a 20% increase in China would seem to be reasonable.
Right. That's us, then you're not assuming that we come out with the 2.5 car. That we're not making that. That's just based on threes and Ys, a better Y, and FSD, and those kind of things. I
Right.
mean that'd be a reasonable thing. But I'm expecting that they can come out with and will announce, you know, possibly early December. I'll be surprised if it's not announced by, I guess, March, that they would have these other vehicles because they said they would do it, and they said first half of
Right.
next year. It's in the
Mhm.
the quarterly earnings report. So that's they missed deadlines before, but in order to really get to the bigger numbers, they need to get some other vehicles in. Um, if they just get the better Model Y, they could come up with a new inexpensive Model 3
Mhm.
that could based upon more expensive batteries, some other technological improvement, they could come in with an economy version of that. But yeah, I'm not sure how well that helps their numbers
So
in
the
China.
so the 2.5, I would agree with you. I would expect them to build 2.5s in Shanghai. We've talked
Mhm.
about where that might be. It might be in the new battery, the place where they're going to do the new, I'm sorry, the new mega packs, but it also
Mhm.
might be in the space that they've made available in the existing Shanghai factory. So if they have the space someplace over there, we would maybe expect them to be doing some 2.5s. And that would
Mhm.
maybe it would only be 50,000 the first year.
Mhm.
Might help us get that 200,000 that I'm talking about that would come from Shanghai.
And the other thing would be that, do they get the FSD full permission in China in Q1, right?
Yes, that was my
Because right, so they have to get that. And then if you have that, and of course you have version 13 already in October,
right,
right? So in the next couple of weeks they come up with the version 13, but then it, ramps up and then gets to every car in the United States, every Tesla car, by November, right? Then the FSD is still improving,
right,
and with even better, the rate of improvement should be better because of the improved computing.
right,
They'll have like 2, 3 times as much computing. Next year they'll have like 10 times as much computing,
right,
and so the rate of which they can train things and continue to improve and get to a perfected FSD. Yeah, and then the regulatory issues are like, they already demonstrated it at the Robotaxi Day,
yes,
where it was driving without drivers, right? So, given how much we improved over 2024, beginning of the year, the new version 12, and now getting up to a version 13, fully feature complete, um, then all of our analysis has to be a superior to FSD 13 version in Q1, a 13.2 or 13.3 or something like that, a version equivalent to a 14 in
right,
Q2, 15, and then 16. And then over that time, when does the licensing deals and other things happen? Because if licensing deals happened with um, Baidu, BYD, and Didi. Didi is the um, equivalent of Uber
right,
over in China with 3 times the many vehicles.
right.
Uber has 7 million drivers, and then Didi has 20 million.
Wow.
So then if China had the national interest of like we want to have robotaxi as a thing, even if supervised, then that would blow out all the estimates of how many sales because no longer individuals buying it,
Right,
or like
right,
someone buying 10 to operate a small flock of robotaxi. It's like these companies are set up and plans to go to hundreds of thousands of vehicles.
right.
So if the software is there and the vehicles are there, then that happens. So
If that
that for
happened,
me,
if that happened, that could actually become a problem in terms of capacity.
right, right. So for me, that is always been my scenario for the last 6, 9 months is that China and FSD and robotaxi,
Right,
they just go together,
right,
right? They're ready to go to 800 cities. They have 800 cities. They want to go to all of them with
right,
all vehicles, and then that would be huge. That would be millions of vehicles. And the
right.
only way you can get maximum vehicles is to make every Model 3, every Model Y next year in that scenario, right?
Yeah,
So so that to me is where things can go crazy. And no one else is saying that would happen.
right,
Or that it would go in such a big way. But it's
right,
like to me, it's like they've been losing, these robotaxi companies. Waymo and stuff, losing $2-3 billion a year, just
Right,
like
right,
throwing it away.
right,
So then if you have $2 billion and actually can make something and have
right,
it work,
right,
then let's say it's $3 billion. Add another billion because then I'm ready to go gang ho. And for $30,000 per vehicle, then that's I think what 100,000 vehicles there, right? So it'd be like if you'd have like 10 companies that can do that
right.
over in China, then that's a million vehicles. So that to me is the main question. Does my scenario around that happen
Happen.
for China?
So we
But then
have
right now we're saying if it doesn't, then you're in the 200,000, 300,000 you're talking
so your cake would have maybe 4 layers.
about.
So we have my layer. So my layer is the bottom layer, which is just normal increases based on the quality of the cars, based on the new car being offered, the cheaper version,
Yeah,
and based on maybe a better economy. So that's like the bottom layer. We
right,
layer on top of that FSD being allowed in China. So
right,
right now people can buy FSD, but they can't turn it on.
right,
So this would be China saying, okay, if you have FSD in your car, you can use it.
right,
And that seems like a highly probable thing. That seems like a
right.
very, very high probability. Then you layer on top of that would be a BYD or a Baidu, or the third company was
DD.
DiDi. These would be companies that would potentially either license or buy cars from Tesla in order to put them in their fleets of
Hmm.
robocabs, um, um, you know, that are already existing. They already have the fleets. It'll be just a matter now of starting to transition over. So
Yep.
as these different layers occur, and of course, and that would be China not only allowing, layer 3 would be actually China not only allowing FSD, but allowing Tesla vehicles to be done without steering wheels, without pedals, without,
Right.
right. So that's kind of
Supervised or unsupervised,
so that would
whatever.
be
I think
four,
supervised next year. Yeah,
so that would be the 4 layers of what might happen in China. And
yeah,
when all 4 of those layers happen, you're suggesting wisely that this would be an explosion that virtually nobody but Brian Wang is talking about,
that's right.
which is why you're a futurist.
That's right. Right. The one thing about that is that robotaxi going crazy in China does not make as much money for the network operator because instead of paying $2 a mile, they're already down at 50 cents a mile,
Right.
right? So
Right.
or even 30, 40 cents, whatever. It's way cheaper to
Right.
ride a taxi of a human taxi
Right.
or any other vehicle in China because
Right.
people just work for less, right?
Mhm.
So the ARK Invest model would not have as much money, right?
Right.
But the thing is, you'd be partnering with them anyway. So they're your partners, Tesla working with DD and whatever, they would be dealing with the fact that they're not making as much money,
Right.
right? But every vehicle sold
Mhm.
has the $8,000 of Tesla's margin
Right.
on it, the profit,
Right.
and then another, say, $8,000 or something of FSD that you must buy FSD with this vehicle,
Right.
right? It's not, it is,
You
in
know,
order to get this thing working, you have to
have to
buy
have it.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's to be 100% attachment rate. Yeah.
Right. Right. Okay. All right. So that would be Shanghai for automobiles. Berlin, I'm figuring only 100,000 increase. Now, again, we might find a layered cake here as well.
Mhm.
That to me would be Model Y Juniper really kicking some butt over there. Now,
Mhm.
whether that is shipped from China, whether that is shipped from the United States, maybe even, or
Mhm.
whether that, I mean, they have plenty of capacity in Berlin with the existing building. It's 500,000. They're only building about 200,000. So it would seem to me that the Juniper would probably come out of Berlin. Moreover, they might, because Shanghai might be coming constricted, we've already talked many times about Model 3 being made in Berlin.
Mhm.
And then you just brought up the Model 2.5 being made in Berlin. And I've
Mhm.
heard others, not you even in this case, talking about Berlin, that the 2.5 should be the biggest seller of all in Europe.
Right, right. A hatchback style version, they like smaller cars.
Right.
If you made a hatchback version that was 25K, that would be perfect for the European market. If you did introduce that, though, you would cannibalize some of your 3 and
Three
Y
and Y. Right.
sales because they want to spend less money.
Okay, so I'm taking my 100,000 as kind of my bare minimum for an increase next year, giving all those. I would call that the first layer of the cake, which is hardware. Now we also can add that second layer of the cake, which would be FSD, waiting for the EU to approve FSD. Now I don't know.
Also Q1. They also say Q1.
They also said Q1.
Yeah.
And do we know in Europe, are you able to purchase FSD but not use it, or is it even available to buy?
I don't think
Think so.
you can.
Yeah.
Well, no, I've seen people using it in like Romania. So I thought there was
Okay.
videos
All right. Okay.
that they had it where you could use it. Yeah.
Right. So this would be not dissimilar then from Shanghai in that we could see Europeans finally able to buy and use FSD. And then if there does come the robotaxi side of it, there could be plenty of, again, a whole nother layer of opportunities there with regard to purchase. And again, we're just talking purchases of hardware.
Yeah.
But 100,000 as a bare minimum next year, I think would be fair. It could be way more than that as these other layers come on top. Is that fair?
Yep, that's fair.
Okay. Not to mention, of course, people are talking about the Cybertruck, and will we only ship from the US, or would they start building Cybertrucks in Europe? That's another question. All right, so that leaves 275,000 to get to the 2.7 million. Let's see here. So we've got the Model 2.5 in the United States. I'm thinking the ramp for next year, if it comes out in March, April, May, something like that, probably maximum about 50,000 next year. Does that make sense?
I think they have to come up with a stronger ramp that they have to get to 100,000 vehicles because of the fact that they will reduce sales of 3 and Y.
You think so? You think the 2.5 will take away from 3 and Y?
Yeah. Counteracting that is the improved Y. You know, the improved Y should increase sales, but then the fact they have a cheap vehicle would slightly reduce that. Less of an issue in the United States because the U.S. doesn't. Americans don't like to buy cheap vehicles.
Right.
Yes. So even if you had one, it's kind of like it's a small thing, so there's less of that reduction. But you could lose 10,000, 20,000 sales per month from a reduction. So if you only get 50,000, your net increase may only be 30,000, right? So you want to come out harder out of the gate if you could, and then get to a higher number, ideally to 100,000 or something like that.
All right. So if we say that, I was saying that we would have also, let's see, I'm sorry, where do I got it here? What did I do? Where's my?
So basically you're saying that 50,000 coming out. So if I'm correct that you do reduce 10,000, 20,000, then your net is 30,000 per month or 40,000 per month, which over 10 months, say if they release it, in February, something like that, then you get to a net increase of 300,000, which is roughly in line with the 275,000.
Oh, okay. Well, wait a minute. So you're talking about per month? So
yeah. I'm talking per month. Yeah, I'm talking about per month.
Oh my goodness. Well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
What was the fastest ramp we've ever had? Like the Model
that Model 3 Model 3 Highland in China.
Ramp and how much? Yeah, but that was already really it was just only a slight change, right?
But they changed up 50% of the parts and blah blah blah. So if you can actually do a Highland style ramp,
yeah,
that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Highland style ramp.
Oh,
if you're doing 50,000 vehicles, you're doing like a Cybertruck type thing, then this is meaningless. Who cares? You're Osborning more than you're producing because it's like nothing. You have I would say a net negative because I'm losing 10,000, 20,000 sales per month because people are waiting for you to get up to volume on that, just like what we're having with Cybertruck.
I see.
So I'm saying you have to do a Shanghai Highland style move. The fact that, like Austin has a line completely ready to go, that you get Tom Zoo or whatever like that, and then you really blast that thing out, right? Because it's supposedly it's our same lines, right?
Right.
So thus it's not, you set it up to be roughly similar, right? It's not like I got all this new stuff from Cybertruck.
Right.
It's same batteries, same type of vehicle. It's instead of the whatever rear of the vehicle, I slap on a hatchback, right? And so it's mostly the same.
I see.
Right. So that is my assumption around that. Right? You're going to get to a big number, and you need to do it because if I'm designing it to be cheaper,
Mhm.
you know, um, 20% lighter, less batteries. I've designed it to be cheaper,
Right,
right? It's still a great value, but
right,
cheaper.
right,
Then, and I'm using the same lines, then I should be designing this to, I'm going to get this to big production. So
right.
that's my assumption what's going to happen.
Oh, okay. So then the other thing that we know for sure, hardware wise, is that we will continue to ramp the Cybertruck. And so if we're going to end up with about 75,000 total for this year and
Hmm.
maybe 200,000 total for next year, that'd be 125,000 more.
Hmm.
So we take that 125,000 more, add it to the 50,000 we just discussed.
Hmm.
Maybe you're thinking more like 250,000, but let's just say that it's something in between. So maybe another 100. So there we could be talking about pretty close to the 225,000 now if we're somewhere in between your number and my number on the 2.5 and its challenges to the 3 and Y that might take place, bringing their numbers down a bit.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Now, but you did say that the Juniper on the Model Y might actually solve part of that, and I think it'll solve more than part of that. I think the Model Y Juniper is going to be a killer product. I, I
Okay.
I just feel it. I just feel it in my bones.
Okay.
Now I felt that way about the Model 3 Highland, and I've been shocked that it hasn't
Yeah.
done better than it did. But I just feel like the Juniper will be going crazy. All right, then let's talk about the layers of the cake again, though.
Mhm.
So we get what you just described in terms of the FSD improvements.
Mhm.
Each improvement not only should mean more uptake, which is going to be more profit, but it should also mean more people interested in buying some kind of a Tesla vehicle so that they can get the really, really sophisticated FSD capability.
Right.
So as the year progresses, I would think that we will be really getting at almost 100% capacity
Mhm.
out of the fact of the Austin and Fremont factories because people will want FSD, even
Mhm.
if it's not uh,
Robotaxi.
robotaxi yet, which is a whole different layer.
Mhm.
So just because it's FSD, we should see a significant improvement.
That's right. Yeah, because it's not the same FSDs we have now. It's
Right.
a radically better FSD. So when you get 3 times better um, per intervention,
Imagine.
you're moving from the equivalent of a new teenage driver to a competent, experienced driver, right?
Right.
So that those kind of jumps, which can happen every month, every quarter, the thing becomes entirely different, right? It's like
Right.
I'm shifting from these levels of going to professional driver. It's perfected,
Right.
right? Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think? We've been talking about this all week on this channel, but maybe I'll get your opinion as well. People are talking about Rains 1220. I think he goes by. If you're not following him, RAINES 1220, highly recommend it on X. And he's been talking about this idea that the FSD now is down to only about 3 major categories of things that it's not doing well.
Hmm.
And maybe there's 25 edge cases or 25 things that only happen very occasionally. Three
Yeah.
things, one of them would be blinking lights, wherever they are. There's problems with blinking lights. Another
Hmm.
would be maybe I can't remember if he said this, but maybe the curb hugging problem
Hmm.
that comes from time to time. And I
Yeah.
forget which the third thing was. But anyway, he was saying that there's 3 that are fairly frequent still,
Hmm.
and then a bunch of edge cases. His theory was that these now can be tackled like really, one at a time type thing
Yeah.
and really start knocking these out. We're not talking about hundreds of things that the system has to learn. We're talking about basically a few.
Mhm.
What
Right.
that makes sense to you in terms of your understanding of learning language or learning models and how
Yeah.
things work?
Well, we've seen that from the um, crowdsourced data on Tesla FSD tracker, that there's just these few categories of problems. So, we can see that even though our data is not as good as Tesla's data, Tesla sees that as well. And so that's what you're solving. I would expect that the version 13 that they were running at the event, 3,000 people, all those rides, that those kinds of issues were solved. Um, and if not, it has to be the next few months that they continue to work on it. So um, it should be quite a perfected system, by December of this year. And then as you get that authorized in those various other jurisdictions, Europe and China, then, you know, whatever we're talking about now, like we're talking about next year, by the middle of next year, everything's solved, right? And it's a fantastic system. And it's the only issue is that you need to get some more data to get regulators to step it up to the next level, right?
Okay, so if we're starting to max out all factories,
Yeah.
okay, in order to get to 2.7, we would be maxing out all lines.
Yeah.
Or darn near maxing out all lines. Then at that point, you no longer have to give as many discounts and deals in
Mhm.
order to make this happen.
Right.
You also are getting more uptake on your FSD.
Mhm.
So a higher percentage of people are taking it and using it.
Mhm.
And then in addition to that, you would have maybe even this quarter, the FSD will be complete. Therefore,
Mhm.
you realize all the income
Yeah.
from the sales as well. Right now, you get all the income from the subscriptions, but you'll get all the income and the previous income that's been held
Yeah.
uh,
Deferred revenue.
unreaped.
Yeah.
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 So all of those things, some of those things might even come true this quarter, but next year we would see it would seem substantially improved margins as well as substantial increases in terms of the FSD income.
Right. Yeah. So if we got to, up from say 10, 15% attachment rate in the United States, and we get that globally
Yeah.
into Europe and other stuff, then that'd be like 1/6 of the vehicles that we sell.
Yeah.
So if they were buying it, that'd be $8,000. So then you would get an extra, $1,000 or whatever, $1,200 of margin. And then if you did a subscription, if it's $100 a month, then you're getting the equivalent of $200. So it's um, improving things, but it's recurring every year. So then it would $200 if you sell the same number of vehicles, it goes to 400. It kind of like keeps accumulating and has more and more impact. Um, but they need to then report that in the
Yeah.
quarterly earnings,
Yeah. No kidding.
right? They need to feed that to the analysts to say, hey, here's the numbers
Yeah.
here's how much FSD we sold in the various regions, and here's how the revenue plays out. Because we don't get the AWS effect if we don't tell them how it's working. If
Exactly.
we just get like 1 or 2% more margin and they have to figure it out where it's coming from,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't help as much to the stock. If it comes into here's a nice little 2 pages in our earnings report of our 20 some pages that say here's how many FSD we sold
Mhm.
in 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 Asia, in Europe, in the United States, and then here's how much we got. Here's the attachment rate, right? If they say here's the numbers, right? Especially if it goes to like 50%, I think they have to do that when it becomes material, like $1 billion
Yeah.
a quarter,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
If it's $1 billion a quarter, then they have to tell us, right?
Yeah.
They have to let, and then here's the number, and then that makes it clear. So then I'm not, assuming and guessing what it would be. But if it's below a threshold of $1 billion a quarter, then they can say, okay, it was doing good, but things are happening. But when it gets over that, then they gotta like break it out. When they break it out and then project it, okay, we're gonna go from 25% attachment rate to 50%,
Right.
right? By Q4, or
Right.
like it
Right.
could go to 30%, or we're improving it.
Yes.
Then, especially if they get to the the volume number report 2 days after the close of a quarter, right?
Right.
Right now they tell us here's how many uh, luxury vehicles, Cybertruck slash S and X we sell. Here's how and deliver and produce. Here's how many 3s and Ys we deliver and produce, and then here's how much energy gigawatt hours we install, right?
Right.
When they give a far better number there and say,
Hmm.
oh, FSD,
Hmm.
we sold or attached at whatever number,
Right.
right? Then that means no one can ignore it, and you can't ignore it because it's a big number,
Right.
right? Because once if you're at 50%, FSD. Half the people who buy a vehicle get FSD. If it was all purchases, that'd be $4,000.
Right,
That'd be half of your, I mean, $8,000 in the car and
right,
$4,000 on the average number of the vehicle. That's 10%. So that is the AWS moment
right,
for Amazon Web Services, where they go from e-commerce to whatever. Where
right,
it's like, I'm not just a car company, I'm selling crap tons of this software,
right.
right? And here's how the numbers work. So they need to get to that point, and then they need to tell everyone what it is. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So without taking into consideration some other things that I'm going to talk about maybe actually in a second video, just on the hardware and the software uptake, not counting robotaxi or anything else, Elon is talking about a 50% increase next year.
Mhm.
He's usually right on his numbers. So that's a pretty good evidence right there. But in general, we've kind of figured it out here in terms of where that would come from. And
Mhm.
part of it would come from the FSD getting better and better and better, which I think we can be conservatively certain of.
Yeah.
If we get a 50% increase in sales, it looks to me like we could end up with closer to a 100% increase in profits on this hardware software part of the business alone.
Right. Right.
Okay.
I
All right.
agree. Yeah.
Okay. We're in agreement on that.
Yeah.
All right. You know what I'm going to do is I'm going to end the first episode here. We'll go on to the second episode. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing that we just did with regard to the hardware, with regard to the cars. We're going to do the same thing with regard to energy. And we're not going to talk about selling any robots, but we're going to talk about the robot impact. And then we're going to talk about that other one that nobody talks about. And I'll let that one remain a secret. So, Brian, thank you for helping out with part one. And in a few minutes, we'll go ahead and start working on part two. And don't forget to go to his channel, Next Big Future, and both his channel and his website. The website is something you can go to every single day because there's usually 3, 4, 5 articles a day.
That's right.
Okay, yeah, all about every kind of science you can possibly think of. All right. So Brian, we'll take a break and be back in a minute. This is, it's been great talking.
Randy, it's Randy.
It's Randy Kirk, and it's been great talking to you.
That's right.